I love your shirt, by the
Oh,
way. I noticed
thanks. I
right
was gonna
away.
show you. I got this off of eBay and I'm so
Love
excited
it.
about it. Isn't it so cool?
It's really cute. I kind of
Yeah.
remember it. I don't think MTV ever turned it into a t-shirt. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I was gonna ask you too, like if you ever got any like cool merch, like if you have any like cool merch from the show.
I have boxes of merch
Oh my gosh.
and they're at my parents' house in New Jersey in the attic, but it's like a tall box. And
Oh
there's Beavis and
gosh.
Butthead merch as well. But a lot of jackets. Like we were very into making our like own jackets.
Wow.
And of course, t-shirts, keychains, coasters, jewelry was amazing. So yeah. To
That
answer your
is
question,
so cool. I was like expecting you to be like, no, I don't really have anything. You're like, no, I have like your whole fantasy dream closet. It's just like in an attic.
yeah, yeah. When I started at MTV, I was already such a fan, so I was always hoarding things. Even in the very beginning of my career, I remember getting all my music videos that I loved, all my favorite bands, and recording them onto a VHS that I just recently transferred to digital because the VHS was gonna like melt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I owe every show I was on, like every watch that was ever created, I always wanted everything. So yeah.
Cool. I love that. I love that you like had the foresight to be like, no, I need to like keep all this stuff. And
Ah, yeah.
so you're from New York, which is really cool.
Yes.
Like Long Island area. I think like Ocean.
Long Island area, yeah. There's a like Long Island and New Jersey are basically the same, but New York and New Jersey like always, rag on the other. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely New York.
Um, how was your upbringing? Like, can you describe your upbringing and like what you were into? I know that you were like huge into gymnastics, so kind of like more creatively though, like what were you into when you were growing up and what was your childhood like?
My gosh, I've never been asked this question before. Starting there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I grew up like I think my first like music experience was they used to have the 45 records, the one hit, and mine, I remember getting Bad Bad Leroy Brown, forgot who it's by, but also Rhinestone Cowboy by Glenn Campbell.
Okay.
And then, and that was like really early days, like maybe I was like 12-ish. But after that, it was right to new wave. Like if you were British, I loved you. It was like all the British bands, from like Duran Duran to like who else? Adam
Flash,
Ant
a little
was a good
flash.
one. Yeah, there's Depeche Mode was another band that I loved and still love. Um, but I started getting really into music and they had this great radio station 92.7 WLIR, which is Long Island Rock. And it was all new wave stuff. And I used to make cassette tapes of just the radio station to bring with me to college so I could still listen to the radio station because I went to college in Philadelphia. So I was like, I need the radio station with the bands that I like. But gymnastics, yeah, I started that about 9 years old, which is kind of late for gymnastics, but did it all through high school and into college. And it was very much my identity. It was all I did. My parents were very pleased that I'd rather be in the gym than at some party, or them not knowing where I was as a teenager. So they were really psyched. But it was really my life and I loved it. And to this day, I still try to stay as athletic as possible with various sports and classes and all kinds of things that I still do. Um, but that's kind of like broad strokes.
So you ended up going to college, and I know that you at Temple
Yeah.
gymnastic scholarship, which is really cool. And
Yeah.
you said that you changed your major like 8 times. You had no idea what you wanted to do.
Right. Right. You've
It's like
done
a
your research.
similar, oh yeah. And like you ended up like triple majoring, which I triple majored too, because I was like the same way in college. I just like didn't know. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and then I was like, this is not what I want to do at all. So
Yeah, and I think it's too much pressure to try to decide, because you're too young to really kind of know,
yeah,
unless you like, have really succeeded in high school and are going to the doctor.
yeah,
You know, if that's what you want to do and you decide that very young because you're from a family of doctors, great. But I
yeah.
think a lot of people, especially creative people, and especially people that age just have so many interests. And that was like my issue because I, of course, started with broadcast media, radio, television, and film, I
That's
think
what
it was
I
called.
did too. I also
Oh,
did
really?
broadcast journalism. Yeah, that's what I started
Nice.
as.
Yeah, I started that to kind of like end up with that, but I switched to psychology and to English and to like forgot what the name of it, physical education, I guess, if you're going to be a coach, and acting was in there. To, why I left Temple was because I hurt myself in gymnastics really bad. I tore ligaments in my knee, which required surgery. And back then it took like a year or more to heal. And it was a really painful experience and recovery. And once I was back, I hurt my back. Um, in a scary way. I mean, to this day, I still have two compression fractures, which are fine, but that was kind of like, you know what?
This
I
is
don't
really
think I should be
scary.
doing this. Yeah, and the doctors and the coaches were even like, you want to avoid like back surgery. And I was like, I don't want back surgery. And they were like, but you can never do gymnastics again if you don't do back surgery. And I was like, that's fine. I was kind of in my like fourth year. But then after that, I was a little lost because the college was like, you need to pick a major and you don't have enough credits in like these, areas. You're going to be going for a while. And I didn't want to do that. And my mother didn't want to do that. So she found a college in Long Island, New York Tech, that would accept all my credits. And I just have to go an extra year. So that's how I got like the triple major kind of thing.
Yeah, that's basically like the same with me. Like I had done journalism for like my whole college career. And I feel like one of the other things that was hard for me as well as like, and I would assume a lot of other students, is that it was hard to convince myself to, since I'd done so much work, that like this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. You know what I mean? It was like, no, I've said, like you said, it's like your identity. I've told all these people, like, this is what I want to do with my life. And then now, like, how are they gonna see me if like I decide to do like something else? I'm gonna look like a failure type of thing. So I feel like it like takes a lot to change your direction in general. Um,
Yeah. I never, even in that fifth year, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I've told this story before, and I only mention that because you seem very researched.
yes,
But
I am.
which is great. Um, but I like to tell this story that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was in an accounting class, and the only thing I could doodle was the MTV logo because I
Yeah.
loved MTV so much. And was doodling that, and the guy next to me said, "Oh, like MTV, my sister works there." And I was just like, what do you mean she works there? Like, how do you work there? Like, it never occurred to me that this was a business with jobs,
Yeah.
So once he said that, I was just like, oh my God, like, how did she work there? And he's like, she was an intern, and then they liked her and they hired her. And I just knew that's what I was going to do. And I applied for an internship like the next day. And with the help of the college, I got an internship at VH1, and they eventually hired me. And VH1 and MTV were on different floors, so I'd spend a lot of time on the MTV floor and eventually was able to get hired there. And ended up in the animation department not too many years later. So
You started with Beavis and Butthead. You got to pick out all the music videos.
that was a great job. Like, I never knew it could be a job, but I had been working at MTV um in another capacity, and people there kind of knew me as like the music video girl because I had just worked on a project where MTV celebrated an anniversary, and there was this major like piece in it that had all these videos, and I was the one that really went through all them. So I had like a good background in videos. But doing that job, I never would have expected it to be what it was. I literally had production assistants bringing me music videos that were on tapes that stacked up like this. And I was just watching videos all day and just writing down my favorite ones. First, I started picking my favorite bands. And then after that, I started picking bands that didn't really like get any airtime. And it also like wasn't an issue then because most artists wanted to be on MTV in any capacity. So yeah, that was so much fun. And once I had those videos ready, we would go into a recording session with writers and Mike Judge, of course. And he would just go on and on with comments. We'd play the video for him, and it was great. And then I pieced all that stuff in the recording session together to have like one of those, and I provided those little pods to the other co-producer who put the whole show together. So that was really fun. It was a great job. And then it also led to Daria, which was another great job, and I never expected that either.
Did you have like full creative control over the videos, or was there someone that was like, you have to pick one of each genre or something like to?
No, I had full creative control, which was also crazy because there was a whole department at MTV that had relationships with record labels. And I actually went to those meetings eventually, um, where they would discuss like whether the video should air on MTV. But because Beavis and Butthead had started airing and was doing so well, MTV was like, just keep doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And there might be some videos in that meeting that we absolutely don't want you to air. And that was fine because I always went for like the underground stuff. And after like a few years, um, Mike really wanted it just mattered more for the video to have something unique in it, whether it was just stupid, like a lot of these hair bands that we had from that you never heard of, that I never heard of. And it was just fun to make fun of them. And the bands themselves were like, great, put us on the show, you know. So after a while, we had to like really start searching for videos that had more going on in them because it started to get monotonous to like, have to comment on the same hair bands over and over. You needed some kind of story that had something unique in it that was interesting to watch. So yeah, it was
You
really fun.
did you have any other contributions to Beavis and Butthead, like the punk aspect of the show? Because like obviously they like wore their band tees and stuff and like were always like rocking out and stuff. Like did
Yeah,
you
no,
do anything else with that?
that was all Mike Judge, and there were other writers on the show as well, but it was really his vision for those
Did
boys.
you
They
like that?
existed.
Like about working on
Yeah.
the show, like that part of it, you were like, yeah, this is like,
Yeah, I don't think I ever would have watched the show if I wasn't in the department and working on it because it just wasn't for me. It was for boys, and I thought a lot of that humor, if from an outside perspective, I thought, oh, that's like not even funny. I'm not interested in that. But I'm so glad that I watched it
yeah.
because of course I loved it, and I got to see firsthand how it affected audiences, and it was great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that that would be anyone's reaction, like actually working on it before anything has happened with it, or like an
Yeah.
audience has like taken a liking to it. You'd be like, what is this? Like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. And
It was ridiculous. It was crazy how fast it like just took over. It created the MTV animation department. Like we
yeah.
used to work on the like underground area that used to be like a bank. And then they got us a building with floors that we were able to like spread out and take over.
You also
Um,
worked on Eon Flux in the Head and like the Max, I think. And I was just
yeah,
you
I
did
mean,
on those shows.
Eon Flux, The Head, The Max, like, MTV Animation was just developing as a department. So I was working on Beavis and Butthead, but I was also wearing many hats on these other series, more as pilots and more development. So I did
Okay.
like a lot of work and help with casting and with creators on that first script. And then they were kind of off and running. But it was great because I got to voice direct and I loved casting. And, again, with all these things that you just like, it's hard to figure out which way to go.
I feel like it's
Like
so cool too, though, that sorry to interrupt you, but like
no, it's okay.
it's so cool that you got to, I think that's a big learning lesson too that I've learned is that it's cool to work at like a small upcoming like type of place. I know it kind of turned
Yeah,
into like a big boom when you got there, but the fact that
yeah.
you're able to like dabble in so many different areas is so cool.
Yeah, and that was internships. Like that internship that I had at VH1, I got to be in the studio, I got to be in the control room, I got to work with the teleprompter. Like if there were all these things to
Yeah.
do, and I didn't know which way to go, but by being there, I felt like the thing that was most natural was the producer side. So I kind of followed that track. And yeah, I ended up in an animation department and then got to do all these other things. And that was great. But I always kind of kept on that producer track because it seemed to cover a lot of things, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but there's so many titles now that the titling of jobs and things now is so convoluting with content creator and content producer. And content creator to me is someone who has like a great TikTok account, but I'm also creating content even though it's not social media, you know? So it's really confusing now, not just because of the pandemic and the aftermath and personally what we're all going through, but in the job market too, I
Yeah.
think.
One question that I definitely wanted to ask is getting back into like the 90s and stuff. I've been wondering this. So I'm a 90s baby. So I did like, grow up in the 90s, but I've always wished that I could have been a young adult in the 90s. And I was just curious if you think that it really was just like an amazing, idyllic time period, or whether you think it just gets a little too, like fantasized and
I think like it's more nostalgic to look back. Like when you're in it, you don't realize. The thing that I think so many of us at MTV realized was the music. That was so amazing. Like hip hop was really starting to become popular, and then just all the Seattle stuff and the grunge was super cool. But then you had some really good pop, like the Spice Girls. So it seemed like there were so many genres and there was so much music, and I loved music, so it wasn't a task to have to listen to it all, but there was so much to listen to, and even on Daria, the music that used to be in the series, the original music, I like handpicked for every like transition that there was or every background music that there was. Now they've stripped all that music to air it now. So those original episodes can't air because of the music rights, which makes a lot of sense now, right? Because back then it was fine, use anything, like use our band, but now it's like, oh, wait a minute, we need to get our artists paid,
yeah,
which
which is crazy that you got to pick from the artists that make up the Daria, like the original soundtrack is an insane lineup, like Radiohead, Beastie Boys, like Nirvana, Fiona Apple, like it's just an insane soundtrack,
Yeah,
original soundtrack.
Fiona Apple was another one of the greats, like one of my favorites. And even though there were those popular artists too, like a lot of producers and music and talent people had DVDs or CDs rather sent to them from record labels. So I would get like 10 or 20 CDs of random bands that I would like take home and listen to over the weekend and see if there was anything that I like. And there was a lot of stuff that I liked from bands that you may not have heard from ever again. Like I don't know why Our Lady Peace comes to mind, but that's an example of one. And if you know the music soundtrack, you can easily like pick them out. But even bands like Toadies, they were so good. Actually recently played here in LA, and it was great to hear all that music again. They had maybe like a couple singles, but they were like a band that kind of never like got above like those few singles, even
Yeah.
though they were so talented, and I
There's like
loved
a
them.
whole YouTube playlist of the Daria soundtrack that has all of the music videos from like the whole thing. And I was like, I'm definitely saving this. I want to go through all of the music videos and everything from,
Yeah, you'll have to send me that list. I
yeah.
feel like I've seen various websites that I haven't been on in a while that broke down each episode and what song was played. That was really cool.
I feel like it's kind of punk though too at the same time that people have to go to these like forbidden links to actually
Yeah,
watch the original like version.
yeah,
Like that's how people are like on Reddit and everything. Like I read tons of comments and stuff from people and they're all like, yeah, you can like find it if you look really hard and like how they always just talk about how it's interesting because some people like both of the different versions. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
some people like the other version because they grew up like, or when they started watching Daria, they watched that version
yeah.
or something. But then everyone from the 90s is like, there is no other version than the
Right.
original soundtrack version.
And there's still people that are just, discovering like, what do you mean there was other music? Like they can't
That's how I was.
contemplate.
I like watched it as an adult, and so it was my best friend's like favorite show. And I had definitely seen Daria on MTV before, but I was
Mm,
like, it's on my list. Like I have to watch this because everyone talks about it and everything, and it's so referenced in culture. Where I was like, and I love adult animation, so I was like, I've always heard it's very witty and everything. So I started watching it, and then I saw like comments that were like, oh my gosh, like the original soundtrack was like had all these different bands on it. And I was like, wait, I swear I don't remember that. Like hearing that. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, I was like, that makes sense that all the music
yeah.
is licensed today and everything, but it is wild that
When did you discover it? How
I
long ago?
just watched it for the first time like a few years ago, like all the way through. But I
And
definitely
it was
have seen
something your
it
friend
growing up.
showed your
Yeah.
friend showed you?
Yes.
Oh.
My
Yeah, I love
best friend, it was like her favorite show ever.
Yeah, and that like keeps happening. Like most of my friends from college will be like, my daughter just discovered Daria,
Yeah.
and I love that that keeps going,
I'm
and
kind
that
of
it's so
happy that I watched it as an adult, though, I will say,
Mhm.
because I understand like the jokes a lot more. And like
Yeah,
there's so many shows that I go back to from my childhood that I'll be like, I definitely did not get any of the humor in this as
yeah.
like a child growing up during that time because it just like went over my head. So
Yeah, well, I
like
think
definitely
like the
appreciated it.
audience was mostly 18 to 24. So it's like young adults. Um, but also if they were younger than that, maybe it went to like 15, I don't know. We had like adult jokes in there for the parents that we were hoping was watching the show with their kid. So, there's a lot like The Simpsons is famous for doing that. It's a
Yeah.
cartoon, so kids are automatically attracted to it, but there's so much adult humor that will go over the kids' heads. But the adults will like it. They'll watch
Yeah,
it too.
I don't know if people do this anymore. Like I don't know if this was just like kind of a 90s thing, but it was a
Mhm.
real thing where my family, we watched shows together. Like we were like kind of the weird, like we were not a traditional like type of family. I always kind of related with Daria. I was definitely like did not have a traditional style family. We would like watch shows when we ate dinner, and we'd be like, one day we'll eat at the dining room table like a normal family like type of thing, but we didn't. So
Yeah.
it's like my family did watch shows with us like that, and
I
so
watch shows with my parents all the time. Even now, my mom's in her 80s and I'm like trying to give her shows to watch. We both love TV and I've always loved TV, which is why MTV was so great for me because it was the two things that I loved, music and TV, So I kind of discovered music, MTV. Gosh, was it 1989 when it started? I don't remember, but I felt like no, it must have been like way earlier. Um, anyway, I remember discovering them and running home from school trying to get to the TV before my brothers did
oh
because
yeah.
whoever got there first had control over the remote, which was on a cord to the TV. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like you had this thing and you couldn't go to the bathroom, nothing. It was taken away from you. If you abandoned it, you had to guard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also
Yeah.
voiced a character, the really like gothic girl. Is it Andrea or Andrea? I can't remember how it's pronounced in the show.
I think in the show it's Andrea. That's how
Okay.
I would say it. But yeah, the joke was that she'd only have like one word lines.
Yeah.
So I figured that was as much acting I could
I was
do.
about to ask, like, how was like the voice acting for you,
Ugh,
like the experience?
so uncomfortable, of course, because I
You're
was
like,
being,
no.
which is why I was just like, I'll just do one, we can only do one word.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, cool, 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 cool.
I love
Or
that.
whatever word she was saying. Yeah,
Yeah. Also, I wanted to know, did you name Trent?
of course I
Okay,
did.
okay, because for anyone that doesn't know, I know that Susie's favorite band is Nine Inch Nails. So I know that he was named after Trent Reznor, but I didn't know if you did that. And I was like, I feel like maybe you did.
I did do that, and I enjoyed picking the names of every character. Glenn Eichler, who is the co-creator, he was the writer of the show. He was in charge of all the scripts. And I remember saying to him, I need to name everyone. The Trent character, he was actually designed to look like Dave Navarro
Mhm.
and what's that guy's name? Jacob Dylan. I
Okay.
don't know if you
I'm
remember
trying
him,
to
but
remember which one. I did see the people that he was like modeled after, but I can't remember. That's not a musician though. It was like a actor.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
Bob Dylan's son.
Oh,
You know,
okay. I didn't
yeah,
see that.
yeah. And
Crazy.
he's so good looking. Like if
Oh
you
yeah.
look him up and you'll be like, oh.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like those are the pictures that I gave to the artist. So they kind of just took features. I know a lot of people have, wondered and kind of speculated who they thought, which is always fun to
Yeah.
read.
No,
But
it really is. There's so many like fun things about this. Did you name some of the episodes too? Because like they have
no,
a lot of like music. Like I know they did some Misfits like references and stuff in there. So
yeah, no, that was like all Glenn, if
okay,
not
cool.
him and the writers that he
I did
worked
also
with.
hear that you were the Jane to his Daria.
Yeah, I've said that before because even though a lot of people say I remind them of Daria, um, he really was more Daria, like
Yeah.
he was the one that was really into books, which I wasn't, which I know is, you know, not cool. Um, but I was more like Jane in that she was like more artsy and she was athletic and she enjoyed someone like Daria the way I enjoyed Glenn.
Yeah. I feel like you do remind me like of Jane though, in like the
Cool.
best way possible. I love Jane. She's
Yeah,
definitely my favorite, probably. I mean, I love so many characters, and that's like exactly what I was going to talk about next anyway, but just like the characters,
yeah,
they're amazing. I just like love them so much, and I love how their stereotypes are so nuanced and stuff, even though like the
yeah,
really crazy stereotypes, of like Kevin and Brittany and stuff, they all have these like nuanced qualities and like redeeming qualities about them that,
yeah.
see like a different side to them. I was going to ask you, who are your favorite underrated characters? Mine is definitely
Um,
Tiffany. I love Tiffany.
oh, she was so fun, and
Yeah,
that voice was
the
hilarious.
show, she like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were so many actors that we hired to do multiple voices, and we were so lucky with the actors that we did get. Wendy Hoops did three characters. She did the mom, she did Quinn, and she did Jane, which was amazing because they were all very different. Um, but she really embodied those characters, and I loved all three of those characters. I loved most of the female characters, just because I related to them more, and I always kind of felt a little piece of me in each and every one. But Tiffany was great. Sandy was really great too.
I love Sandy too. There's so many people like on all the comments that were like, that was definitely her and Tom were the two like most hated characters. And I was like,
Oh,
I thought Sandy was like the funniest person ever, honestly. Like,
she was the funniest person, and Lisa Collins, who did her voice, also did the voice of Brittany.
mhm.
And when she came up with the Sandy voice, Glenn and I just thought it was so funny. So we kept giving her like more and more lines just because we were so entertained by
Yeah,
it and would laugh so hard in those recording sessions. And, every weird thing she did, like the weirder the better. So there were a lot of people, actors like that, you know, really kind of um created the characters along with us because they had that added voice or insight.
yeah.
So it was really fun. Voiceover recording sessions were really fun.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. I feel like the episodes were really great too. I feel like everything was just written so well. And they have
Yeah.
these topics that really just make you think about things and really apply to adults, a lot of adults, and hold up throughout time. And like I know one of the episodes that's your favorite is Misery Check with the rule.
Yes.
Yeah. So like the football player passes away, for anyone that doesn't know, he's kind of a jerk. This guy is a jerk and he like passes away. And then everyone just feels so sad, but they didn't really know him and he was a jerk and stuff. And I love how Brittany is like, he was just like really rude. But she was like, but I feel so bad for thinking that. And Daria has this great line at the end that's just like, people aren't upset about him passing away. They're upset because they're going to pass away like one day. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's so true. Like, it's like I've had this experience really like not that long ago where I felt the same way. And then I was like, damn, that is true. Like, that's how I'm feeling.
I think one of the things I loved about that episode specifically is that everyone started coming to Daria because she was always like she's been presented to others and not on purpose as like this doom and gloom girl
Mm.
when she's like, this is my expression. Like, I'm not doom and gloom. Like, why does everybody think that of me? And it was like everyone misunderstanding her and who she is. And that's what I really connected with. I remember at the end of that episode, she had this whole speech um that she gave to Jane about all of that, about being the misery chick. And it touched my heart. I
He had the
remember,
best response though. Jane was like, it's
yeah,
not that, it's the fact that you think like it all.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily that it's maybe they're portraying you as that, but they just know that you, yeah, you actually ponder and wonder about these types of things and you think about these types of things.
Yeah.
Within
Glenn wrote
yourself.
that episode, and I just remember after reading it, I remember going to his office and being like, oh my God, this is perfect, because of course I had some input on the scripts, but he was really in charge of most of it. But I remember being like, I don't have any notes. It's good.
It's
The
like
other favorite episode of mine was the musical,
I
which
know I
some
read
people
that that
hate.
that was like one of your favorites too, which
Yeah, it's
makes sense.
one of my favorites because I totally thought of it and everyone thought I was crazy. But at the time, there were all these 90s shows that were doing musicals. Like Ally McBeal did a musical. I think Scrubs did a musical. I forget what else, but like everyone was doing them. And I loved musicals. I grew up in New York, and of course, my parents took me to see musicals every year for Christmas, which was our tradition. And I just loved it, like, so I was like, we have to do a musical. And I remember Glenn being like, okay, well, how would that go? I'm like, well, there would have to be like a disaster, like in Wizard of Oz. There's a tornado. So what could happen in Lawndale, A hurricane. Okay. And we thought about like each cast member singing and whether they could or not. And surprisingly, a lot of them could really sing. And for the ones that didn't, that were really uncomfortable, like Tracy Grandstaff doing Daria, she was like, oh my God, you guys. And she did it perfectly because she kind of spoke as she sang, which was different than everyone else. And so on par for Daria, So that was like another perfect storm, like producing that whole
A
show.
lot of animated shows do a musical episode now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think South Park did one too.
definitely
Yeah.
did like Big Mouth, this one that I've been watching, um, did like there's I feel like every one that I watch now has a musical episode.
Yeah. I think it's,
They started the trend.
I think so.
I also kind of on the note that you were talking about before about Daria's personality and being like misunderstood, that's definitely one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is that there is a lot of debate online
Yeah.
about her personality in general. And it's like kind of like the debate of like cynicism versus realism in a way,
Mm,
where like there's a lot of people that are like, she's judgmental and she's rude and she's like mean and I don't understand why people like her character like type of thing.
yeah.
And then there's other people that are like, no, that's not what it is. She's just real and she's sarcastic, but that's not how, you should define it as her being like mean or something or like, necessarily. And so I was going to ask you what you thought about that and if you think that Daria falls under the category of being neurodiverse in any way, since she
Mm,
struggles with a lot of like anxiety and like social problems. And like there's even an episode where her parents, like it goes, I think it was when you were gone, so you may not have seen this episode, but
mm,
it was like a flashback to where her parents had a lot of problems because she was like not social with her peers growing up,
yeah.
like a child and stuff. So I just didn't know
Yeah.
that.
I mean, we all have anxiety in high school, right? I
Yeah.
think now it's just more defined and paid attention to as opposed to then. And all those words that you use to describe her personality, I think it's a little bit of everything. But I also, you know, I say that like Daria never would have worked anywhere except MTV, because MTV was very much about let's grow our animation department. Let's do something that's more focused on girls. And oh, we've got this character in Beavis and Butthead who hasn't been fully developed. Maybe that's how we spin her off. And there was never this this pitching session where we had to describe story arcs and how seasons would go. And that is the beautiful part about it all coming together, because now you really have to do that. But I think even now or even then going around to networks and pitching a show about a sarcastic young girl who's smarter than everyone, who thinks she's smarter than anyone, who's constantly making sarcastic slash mean comments. I don't think any executives would have been like, oh, let's do that.
Yeah,
I think
for
they would have
sure.
been like, no, so it's, I mean, I think everyone has anxiety in high school. So certainly Daria had it, and so did Jane, and so did Quinn, and so did all those other
Yeah.
girls and boys in that high school who like, and it came out in a certain way, but it's so relatable because everyone experiences those feelings, whether you're Daria or Quinn or Sandy or Tiffany or Upchuck.
Yeah, and especially like I
It's
know that like Lena Dunham had come out and said something like to the effect of like kind of similar, but she also used the word like massive depressive, which I was like, okay, I don't get that at all because I just don't see her. I'm kind of like that too. I don't see her as being depressive in any way. To me, it's more
yeah,
like a realist point of view and sarcastic, but I don't I even like rewatched almost all of the show like very recently and was like, I still don't get like depressed in any way.
yeah. I, I'd be curious to know if she ever really watched it.
Yeah, that's what people
I,
said like in the comments. They were like, did you even like really watch the show though? To like, no.
yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah, because there's a lot of fans that I meet who tell me that when they were in high school, they knew of it, but they didn't really watch it until much later,
Yeah.
and they didn't really watch it because that was probably the message that they were getting was this. And a lot of people think sarcasm is like a mean way of telling the truth. And Daria definitely says what's on her mind and tells her truth of how she may observe a situation or how she feels about something. And because she's not smiling and doing it in a perky way, it's interpreted as sarcastic and mean and depressive and antisocial, and that's just that whole concept of misunderstanding and why she feels misunderstood because she's being herself, but she doesn't have the same social cues as Quinn has.
Yeah.
So she has a little bit more trouble getting through the social part of school. And I think more people have trouble with that. You always have the arty kids um, that relate more to her. And that's such a big part of high school. But usually the arty kids are kind of pushed to the side. Or you're grouped as like a nerdy kid who's pushed to the side. Only the cheerleaders and the fashion club, rise in high school,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
No,
along
for
in high
sure.
school.
I
Yeah.
definitely relate. I feel like so many people relate with that. And like another aspect too of like Daria in general that everyone loves, but that I personally relate to is just like the fact of it just challenging the norm and like
Mhm.
conformity and stuff. And I always was like that as a child as well. Like I would like ride the school bus and like pass all the houses in the suburbs and stuff, and they all looked like the same house. They're all like the
Mhm.
cookie cutter lifestyle. I grew up in a very small town where it's like you're supposed to get married at like 21 and like have a child and stuff. And as a kid, I very much remember being like, I don't want to do that. I like
Yeah.
very much do not want to be like the other like 85% of the people that I go to school with and stuff. Like that's just not what
Yeah.
I want. I didn't know what I wanted. I still don't know what I want, but I know that I don't want that like type of
Yeah.
thing.
And
It's not a bad
I
thing or a good
loved,
thing, but it's just
yeah.
who I was. I just didn't
Yeah.
want that life.
Well, I love that, that people, especially women, are realizing that they don't really need a man or a partner. If they want one, then that's great. But you can have a career and stay single and independent and successful.
Somebody also brought that one of the things that they said was their favorite aspect in the comments or something, said that they liked the way that the show promoted that you didn't have to have a relationship, you didn't have to have
Yeah.
like a big job title or whatever, just like promoting self-happiness without like those types of things is a great aspect
Yeah.
as
I
well.
mean, I grew up thinking I'd be married with children, and I thought like the older I get, I would start to want that more and more, but that never really happened.
It's
I
kind of
never
like how
wanted
I
it,
am. I feel that, and it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where it's like sometimes you don't know that the other route exists. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, there is another way. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to be married and have children and like do all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like there is
Yeah.
other ways of happiness in life.
You
And
can even like be married and decide you don't want kids
yeah,
together.
yeah, for
You
sure.
know, like if you want to be a couple, you can be. Like, yeah, there are so many avenues now that you could go,
But I feel
which I
like
think is
Daria
great.
promotes that really well. And like, I just love that personally. I love that aspect of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I want to see more. I'm really
Yeah.
mad that there hasn't been like any type of revival or anything, especially like the character drawings that you did or whatever for I forgot
Yeah.
what magazine it was, but kind of gave an
Entertainment
update.
Weekly.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
gave an update of everyone, and I'm just like, especially with the social media time period of our life, I'm like, I really would love, I think the world needs like a
Yeah.
Daria like aspect to this world, and like for the us to stay hopeful and be like, okay, there's still people out here that aren't crazy. That
I mean, I think a lot of people speculate a lot and rumors happen very easily. I mean, it's really fun when I hear like, oh, there's a Daria reboot happening and that comes out somewhere and then people start texting me like, "Oh my God, congrats." And I'm like, I don't I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know what those, conversations are, you know, but I'll never lose hope. I hope she can come back with the creators of the show. That would be great.
Well, thank you so much. I am so like grateful that I got a chance to talk to you. Like you just like
Yeah.
it's just actually iconic that you did the music for Beavis and Butthead and Daria. Do you like know how iconic that is?
Um, you know, I of course have always been taught that I should never brag.
Yeah,
So I never really lead with it, but I'm flattered and happy with that comment, you
yeah.
know.
I feel like
I'll
it's
always
like any
take it.
like creative person's dream to like do something like that. And then you're just like, okay, I did
Yeah.
it. Like I have this huge contribution artistic
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah. And now it's like it was so early in my career and I've done so many things since then, but I'm so happy that I had that chance.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking with me. I hope that we get a chance to meet in real life.
You'll let me know.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.